What's up, ladies and gentlemen of the internet? How are you guys doing? This past week, I sold 3 bikes. Each bike sold within 24 hours of it being posted, and each bike sold for the full asking price. Does this mean that I'm the world's best used bike salesman? Maybe, probably. I'd say definitely one of the top 10, right? So in this video, we're gonna go over 6 basic steps to help you sell your used bike fast. Okay, over the years, I have accumulated an epic ton of bike stuff. Technically, I had 4 bikes, but I'm not really gonna count this Trek Speed concept behind me. It's not exactly what I would call like a trusty steed or something like that. But if you want the backstory on that particular bike, I'll link the video up here somewhere. It's kind of a crazy story. Now, the worst part about this is I kind of want more bikes. My road bike was a little bit small. It was a 54 and I'd really prefer a size 56. The cyclocross bike that I had was kind of a cheap bike. It was great, but it turned out that I didn't really love racing cyclocross as much as I had expected to. I liked the practices, I just didn't really love the racing bit. And then I had this fixed gear bike, and I thought that would be super fun in the winter time, just to ride that or be able to take it just short distances and things like that. But I just never used that bike. And so it was definitely time to sell some bikes. And the first thing that I would recommend that you do, and the first thing that I did, was clean these bikes up. And I actually should have done a better job cleaning these up. The Specialized, for example, is a white and red frame, and the white really shows a lot of dirt. And so I definitely made sure that the bike was at least showing its true colors. And I did clean the drivetrain, but I definitely could have spent more time on the cassette and the chain. And cleaning the bikes has gotta be like the minimum amount of stuff that you're gonna wanna do before selling your bike. Probably took me about 45 minutes to clean up these 3 bikes, and I just waited for a nice day and knocked it out pretty quickly. The other thing I did was just kind of go over these bikes and see what needed to be worked on. One of these bikes needed new bar tape, and then I just went over all the bolts of all the bikes and just made sure that they were torqued down to the manufacturer's suggested tension levels, which is really more of like a safety issue rather than anything else. Okay, one of the fun parts about this was trying to snap some good photos of these 3 bikes. And I think I got some decent photos. I wanted the long road down my street in the background of this. And then I wanted a shallow depth of field so that you weren't really focusing on that background, or you weren't distracted by that, and that you were just kind of looking at the bike itself. And I noticed a few weeks ago how Eric Lagerstrom and Paula Finlay, who are 2 pro triathletes that also have a YouTube channel, they had taken a picture of her new Trek domain, and I kind of used the same technique here. But basically, you just have someone hold the bike, and then just let go real quick for a second while you take a burst of photos, and then you just crop out the person that's holding the bike, so that you just end up seeing the bike looking like the bike is standing up on its own. And I did get some fun comments like, good job on the Photoshop, I can't even see how you stood the bike up. But it is a good technique and it's definitely worth passing on. Okay, when taking these photos, I tried to take a photo of the front of the bike, both sides of the bike, and then more detailed photos of the components. So nothing super artistic with these photos. I just wanted to post a few photos that would help the buyer make a decision. And I'm listing these bikes during the pandemic when there is a shortage on bikes and there's a particularly high demand for bikes that are under $1,500 and an even higher demand for bikes that are under $1,000. And it's also summer in the Pacific Northwest, which is an absolute amazing time to be on your bike. Basically every day is sunny and warm and the days are long. And because of the quarantine, there are less cars on the road. So if you are selling bikes, I would say do it now and do it quickly before the season changes. Okay, I posted these bikes to both Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. I was looking for local buyers. I didn't post it on eBay or anything like that. I really didn't want to ship this bike or anything crazy like that. And I tried to list as much information about the bikes as possible. So that would be stuff like make and model of the bike, all the details on the components of each bike, but also important things like the size of the bike. And just in case someone isn't super familiar with bike size, I suggest also listing, an ideal height range for someone that might use the bike. Something like, 5'10" to 6'1" or something like that. And I know those numbers aren't ideal, they're not perfect, but it should at least help someone narrow down whether or not they should even be looking at this bike, and whether or not this bike may or may not fit them decently. Generally speaking, I'd suggest adding more information to these listings versus less. For example, people aren't probably going to ask about stem length or handlebar size, but others will appreciate you having those details in the listing itself. And when listing your bike, I tend to try to highlight why this bike is worth the price that I'm asking for, and potentially why this bike might even be worth more than what we're asking for. For example, one of the bikes that I listed, I specifically mentioned the 11-speed 105 component set, which is a great component set, and that particular component set on its own is worth as much as the asking price that I specified for that particular bike. And I feel like it was honestly one of those little points that just drove home the value of this bike and showing that the bike is priced very, very competitively. And when I buy a bike, I tend to be one of those people that shops around a good bit, looks for sales or deals. I'm one of those sale guys, right? Like, show me a sale and I'll give you my money. So when I price these bikes, I'm taking into account, what I actually paid for these bikes, minus having used this bike for 5 years, which ends up making for a screaming deal for someone looking for that used bike. And now when you compare that particular price that I'm asking for to the manufactured suggested retail price, it just ends up being a no-brainer for the buyer. And right after expressing the value that they're getting with this bike, I go ahead and mention that the price is firm. Selling bikes is definitely not my full-time job, and I just don't have time to be haggling with people over the price. My goals with selling these bikes is just to give someone a great deal on a good bike and not to maximize profit or anything crazy like that. And if you take anything from this video, I hope that you will remember this. Some of these cyclists may be, super experienced cyclists. They may know exactly what they want, but 9 times out of 10, you're gonna be working with a brand new cyclist and someone that I think could really use your help. As these people are testing out bikes, they might need help, learning how to shift their bikes, or potentially, what things that they should check out, what issues they should look for before each ride. Definitely something that I should make a video on. And if your new rider does live in your particular area, they may just want to know cool places that they should go for a ride. And for 2 of these bikes, I gave an extra pair of new tires to the buyer. One was the road bike, and it was just because these particular tires were a little bit old, and I just kind of figured that particular buyer could get a few more miles out of the older tires, but then have a brand new pair of tires to swap out when they were ready. And for the cyclocross bike, I mostly gave a pair of tires to the guy buying that bike because I had a pair of extra tires, and you know, I'm probably not gonna need those in the near future. So I think if you're willing to throw in, you know, some extra bottle cages or just any sort of extra parts that would go well with the particular bike that you're selling, I think that kind of stuff goes a long way with just helping the buyer feel comfortable with their new purchase. And lastly, I would just say, keep in mind that these people are also doing you a huge favor. Sometimes you just need to get rid of a bike. And definitely that was the case with my single speed bike. I just wasn't getting much use out of it, and it was just taking up space. And the bike itself, it just wasn't worth a lot. So I actually thought it would be hilarious if I posted it to Facebook, asking for the most interesting trade. So there were actually some pretty funny comments on that. But ultimately I decided on this. This is a very old used Italian accordion. And it's numbered 88 of 209 made at the time. I've got to imagine that it's close to 100 years old. And I'm super pumped about this. And my friend who ended up getting the single speed is gonna paint it and fix it up. And I'm sure he'll end up doing something super cool with that bike. So if you are into this sort of thing, and that would be, you know, swimming, biking, and running, you know, accordion playing, definitely consider subscribing to the channel. There's also a little notification bell down there that you're gonna wanna switch to all, just so that you're notified of whenever I post something new, which is typically about once per week. All right, guys, I really do appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this video, and we will see you guys on the next one. Ready? 3, 2, 1.